Yo, welcome to the Cosmic Paradox channel. Like, subscribe, and share. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. So, this is the Shadow Work and Astrology class. Now, I'm presenting to you today. My name is Rakia. I go by Queen Ra. You're probably here from Cosmic Paradox, so I welcome you and thank you for taking the time to wanting to look into how this course is presented. So today in this course, we're going to be talking about the planets. Now, everything that we deal with in reference to this particular course is the means of applying this knowledge to do shadow work, the means of doing transformative healing, transmutation, alchemy, spiritual and mental. So for all those who are here, our spiritual awareness, our soul awareness is very important. So with all of that being said, this is information that, if applied in a particular way, can be very transformative for your life. And I hope to present this to you in a manner that you can digest it that way and see how to apply it to your life. So, now that I've said all of that, let's jump into it. Now, so we're going to talk about the planets. Alright, now, planets as energy regulators. Now, Hermetic principle or Hermetic law, the law of correspondence, pretty much states that man has pretty much known that he is the microcosm of the macrocosm. So the micro, or the smaller version of the entire universe. Now, ancient yoga speaks of the chakras within each person, and these chakras also, are energy centers. Okay, and many esoteric schools of thought have correlated various chakras with certain planets, and that's not just esoteric schools of thought, but other forms of spiritual, African spiritual traditional systems, depending on how you view or label those things. But it's been quite a few of different paths, whether that's certain indigenous groups or what have you, but there's pretty much been that link or that correlation between the chakras with certain planets. And this is because the planets are related to us by the same vibratory energy waves, which are latent within us, to which we respond. You see, these chakras are the centers within us that corresponds to certain centers of energy in the solar system. So this is what is being referred to when the gods, the rulership of the gods, because we are talking about certain vibratory energy waves. So these energy waves correspond to these energy centers that is within us, right? So these chakras, or the sign. Now, when we're looking at it that way, that particular planet, whatever sign a planet is in, reveals the attunement of the energy wave or the force that's within us. So if you really look at it from everything we've learned so far from the zodiac in different structures, and looking at the birth chart, even in just the introduction of it, we can see that this is just a means or a system or a way of description to describe our psyche, to describe certain habitual patterns that we may be succumb to, how certain energy can affect us. It's just honestly a language of energy. See, the planets generally symbolize basic forces or active centers in our solar system, which manifest as basic or fundamental psychological functions, urges, needs, and motivators. So the planets in the signs serve, as it were, as primary stimuli in the energy fields of the signs. So they symbolize the universal principles which regulate all energy functions in any organic whole. So it's like another way of expressing it is to say that the planets characterize the mode of energy exchange between the individual human being and the universal storehouse. So this is your exchange with the universe. So they represent the major active principles which form character and motivate all types of self expression simultaneously on every level: mental, emotional, and physical. You see, in ancient times, the planets symbolized the gods which must be worshipped, meaning that these fundamental life forces cannot be ignored. And if they are, that's only at the peril of the individual. So they must be recognized, paid due attention, and accepted. Then the energy inherent in them can be consciously directed. So if we are not aware of the forces, then we are at the mercy of them, i.e., food for the gods. Because if you don't understand how to channel and direct that energy, then you're just a puppet on strings. That's why sometimes people can feel like, man, God must be playing with me, the universe must be playing with me. It's the way the energy is manifesting like in your life. So the science in it is that your birth chart is trying to describe to you how you project your reality. That's your key. That's your secret key. How to this is how you see your reality. So once you understand how something works, you can reverse engineer. You can change things. This is alchemy. This is magic, as they make it out to be. This is all these things really are. This is shape shifting. This is quantum jumping. This is manifesting. All of these things, because if you can change your mind, you can change your life. The mind is all. This is the very first Hermetic principle. The mind is all. Okay, now also we can look at the days of the week. The days of the week being aligned with the planets as well. Sunday, the sun, Monday, the moon, Tuesday is Mars, so forth and so forth. Now, what you can know about this is when you look up your birthday, the day that you was born is considered your power day. So, considering when you're working with energy, and as you further understand more and more what these expressions of energy is referring to, then you can know how you can utilize that information. So like as far as some type of days or some leeway into things about your character, your nature, when you're, let's say that you might be up for a job interview or something, and you got to choose the day. Maybe you was born on a Jupiter. Maybe you was born on a Thursday. So maybe you wanna go in on a Thursday. You wanna capitalize on the energy that's around you and build off of it, because that was a major point in time for you. So therefore, being that you was born on a Thursday, that Jupiter can have some sort of influence in how you move and how you do things and how you start things. And also that'll be useful for using in your chart. But we're gonna talk about that when we talk about the chart and bringing it all together with using all this information and looking at your chart. So hopefully by now y'all have all gotten access to your chart. So you can just look it up online. You can just find any astrology website and just get it for free. You just want the chart. It's not necessary to get any interpretation, because everything that you get from the class is going to teach you how to understand how to read the chart anyway. So by now, hopefully everybody has gotten their chart. All right. So that's just another means of looking at the days of the week and how they correlate to the planets. And again, that corresponds to your chakras. That corresponds to the same thing could say when people look at Norse gods, or when they look at Egyptian gods, or when you look at the Orisha. Like, all of these things are just systems to provide you with a means to interpret spiritual, you know, just a means for you to interpret. So for different people, there's different things, because different people walk different paths. They have different bloodline, they have different lineages, they have different karmic paths and different things of that nature. So depending on, a lot of it is really dependent on the person. Because when you get, the deeper you get into spirituality and the empowerment of the self, and you using this information to empower yourself, you realize it becomes more and more about what you feel from yourself. And you utilize that. Like, that's the magic. Like, you have to put to it. You can look in books all day long. You can look at spiritual teachers all day long. But you are the master of you. So if you want to change your reality, then you have to, it has to be about you. So all of this is a mindset thing. All of it is a mindset thing. It's about, you activating that higher mind. So because think about it, all of this is correlating to the chakras as well. So when you look at the chakras and you look at, take for example, we're talking about the pineal gland and we're talking about the third eye. You're able to access and process information through your higher mind, and it's not just your lower chakras. So you're able to access a higher sense of reception. So it gives you more opportunity, because you are just more open to more things happening to you. But at the same time, we're wired in the ways that we're wired now. So what's happening in our life is the way that we're wired for it to happen now. Alright, so let's move on. So that's just like we looking at alchemy. We talking about the transformation, transmutation, and alchemy. These are planetary glyphs. So it's just still a means or a system of describing energy. We look at the Kabbalah. It's all interconnected. It's just about a language or a preference. So I took the means of looking at it through astrology, because astrology is such a strong and broad connection for a lot of different people. So that was the means of, but we could look at it in terms of, all different types of systems, and how all of these are pretty much talking about self-realization, leading yourself to a higher spiritual being. So, but that's all we're gonna be here to see anyway. That's what we're gonna pretty much build on. So this is just to look at it in the same sense in other systems. We still see planets. We talked about the tarot cards being connected to the planets. Well, we will talk about that. So let's look at the astrological theory of personality. So if we look at psychologically, in psychological astrology, the planets can be divided into different groups. So these planets show what forces we can consciously, when we look at the basic personal factors, the sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, these are considered the basic personal factors. These planets show what forces we can consciously direct or modify to some extent. So these planets characterize the more obvious personality traits and strongest urges in the individual. So everybody experiences a sense of individuality and self-identity, which is considered the sun. You know, everyone experiences a sense or a way of reacting spontaneously based on conditioned responses. That is the moon. You know, an ability to reason and to exchange thoughts with others. That's Mercury. A need and a capacity for love and close relationships. That's Venus. A drive towards action, self assertion, sexual experience. That's Mars. So when we're looking at um, those energies, that's pretty much what we mean. And this is just a theory of personality and a means of breaking down the planets into how it structures out the personality. So the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, we are able to consciously direct this energy. You know, even when we have strong urges, we have the ability to not act on these urges all of the time, you know. So that's just basically what that's meaning and what's that's entailing to that. Now, deeper motivational and collective factors, looking at Jupiter and Saturn. So underlying these basic personal factors are the deeper motivational and collective factors. These two planets, you know, they kind of represent specific urges, but they also indicate deep states of being experienced as the superconscious in Jupiter or the subconscious in Saturn needs. So remember, because we're talking about this is a theory based around psychological astrology. So this is a way of trying to understand how the zodiac, the planets, how all of this constructs out your personality. Specifically here, the planets, right? So the collective significance refers to their impact on how one wants to participate in the world at large and in relation to social activities. So these planets represent, take for example Saturn, the deeper currents of stability, tradition, safety, future aspirations. So when you're looking at Jupiter, it's a sense of adventure, risk taking, personal growth. So these are just different means of looking at it. Now that when we look at lastly the transpersonal factors, okay, so the transpersonal factors into the transformative energies within the life of each of us, and that's comprised of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. It symbolizes the most profound sources of change in life, transcendent dimensions of experience, and the most subtle energies to which we are attuned. These forces affect our more conscious faculties through inspiration, flashes of insight, intuition, innate knowledge not learned from intellect, an urge to merge oneself in a greater whole, and a strong impulse towards refining one's deepest nature. So when these energies come into play, the old patterns of life are shaken up and they change. So these are transpersonal factors when we're looking at the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, because they are even further out. Remember, these were later discovered by the people who came up with this Western astrology. Remember, we are looking at it in terms of what we commonly know, but in the same sense, even when you look at other systems or looking at other ways of looking at it, because it's just like looking at it from a different side, it can still apply, because it's like understanding just what the energy is saying. And some of this that we get into is more of an Eastern way of looking at what the planet entails, but this right here is just the astrological theory in psychological astrology. So That's just one means of looking at it. Now, it shows each planetary principle that can be expressed, positively, negatively, and creatively. Creatively or self-destructively. So these are each planet's dimensions of experience. So based on what a person's, you know, sign is, depends on how they may be in harmony with higher law or disharmony. So this results in the creative use or in the misuse of our energies or our forces or how we're attuned. So when we have certain aspects of these planets, it brings out a more of a negative expression, meaning that that's a key for us to know that that's somewhere that we have to work. Okay, so due to this energy expression right here, you can feel yourself more pulled to be having this particular experience. So when we understand what that is, then we can look at it, okay, or say, okay, well, here's a more way we can bring that to light, because until you become aware of it, it's more of a reflective, it's more of a subconscious thing. So when you bring it to light, doing that shadow work, you're able to come to terms with how you can deal with, more so balancing out that energy, because it just means there's somewhere you gotta balance, because there's a disharmony there. So you have to bring it into harmony. Now, people do different means of healing and bringing themselves back in harmony. All right, so that's just depending on how people, what their spiritual system is, or how they, pretty much go about it. And I'm gonna get into some different means or different different ways or different paths of doing some of those different things. But it all takes some time to kind of get all that information kind of out there. So if y'all bear with me and be patient, we gonna get there. We gonna get there. Okay, now so we looked at this. Now let's move. So key concepts for the planet. So astrology uses 10 planets, including Pluto, and we say the sun and the moon. All right. So in the birth chart. So the sign and house in which each planet is located is what varies with each individual. Okay, so the planets represent 10 basic, distinct human urges we all experience on an internal level. Now, an urge refers to the desire to express and or experience a specific, unique energy. Love, security, self-expression, vitality, etc. Now, we all feel these urges. It's the path to fulfilling them which is different for each of us, as indicated by the signs and the houses where our planets are located. It's like 10 different domains inside of us, and each planet rules its own realm of experience or its own dimension. So that's a means of in you being multi-dimensional, because each planet or each chakra, you know, each one correlates to a different realm of experience. And depending on that realm of experience is gonna, has to deal with that urge. Right? So now this is just a means of looking at these are the principles, and I think I only got one page here, but I provided this in you should have been able to download the file very early in. So go back and look if you don't have it, but it should be there for you to download. And you should have all of these charts. Alright, so, and that'll, kind of give you that as like a means to refer to. You could put more notes on it or whatever, because, like I said, that specifically is centered around psychological astrology. So that it's geared to interpret the psyche. So it's helpful in that means of self-help, personal development. But there is more to it, but that's just one resource that you can utilize. And I will provide, I've already when I put it there, the source of it, but I put it at the end so you can see the source for that too, where that comes from. Now, the four essential dignities in astrology. Now, the planets have like favorite signs they like to be in, but basically, it's like a better means of that planet's energy to be expressed. Okay, so, and it's something that they don't like to be in. It's something that they don't like. So these are called the essential dignities. The essential dignities of planets in astrology are domicile, domicile or ruling. Uh, that's the sign that it rules over. So a planet is considered to be in domal dignity when it is positioned in the sign that it rules. So, the sun ruling over Leo, the moon Cancer, Mercury rules Gemini, Virgo, Venus rules Libra and Taurus, Mars rules Scorpio and Aries, Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces, and Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius, and Uranus rules Aquarius, Neptune, Pisces, and Pluto, Scorpio. So these are when the planets are in what's considered to be domicile or in their ruling sign. All right. So that's what that means in terms of terminology, just in knowing what that means. So if you see domicile, it just means that okay, so that it's in the ruling sign. It's in the sign that it rules over, or in a sign that it rules over. Depending on which planet that it is. Okay. Now, detriment. So a planet is in detriment or exile when it's in the sign that's opposite the sign it rules over. So whenever a celestial body is in detriment, it's said to not be comfortable in that sign. It don't like it, and it tends to operate at its least strength. So just kind of keep that in mind in terms of when you're looking at your chart. So if you have any of the planets that's in a detriment, then how that can implement in your, within your life, how you can have see that energy played out in your life. So when the sun is in Aquarius, it's in a detriment. The moon in Capricorn, Mercury in Sagittarius or Pisces, Venus in Aries or Scorpio, Mars in Taurus or Libra, Jupiter in Gemini or Virgo, Saturn in Cancer or Leo, Uranus in Leo or Neptune in Virgo, Pluto in Taurus. So these are the detriments. All right. So now we have the exhaustion. So exhaustion is like when it's in a place of awareness. So it's like it's not the ruling, but it's a pretty good place to be in. So the sign is the position of it is directly opposite the sign of exhaustion is considered to be its fall. So each of the seven traditional planets have exhaustion in one zodiac sign. So we got Sun is exalted in Aries, the Moon is exalted in Taurus, so the Mercury is exalted in Virgo, Venus is exalted in Pisces, Mars in Capricorn, Jupiter in Cancer, Saturn in Libra. So the way I see it is it's kind of like it's in a like in a lucky type of position, like it's in a blessed sign, it's in a in a gifted sign. If that's how I look at when a planet and they looking at exhaustion. Now a fall is like, oh, it's not detriment, but it's a fall. So exhaustion is awareness, but the fall is weakness concerning the function of the planet. Alright, so the sun is in fall in Libra, because the moon is in fall in Scorpio, Mercury in Pisces, Venus in Virgo, Mars in Cancer, Jupiter in Capricorn, Saturn in Aries, Uranus in Taurus, Neptune in Capricorn, Pluto in Leo. So I view it more like a feeling like something is missing in the energy, like it can't be expressed fully when it comes to the fall sign, or you know Yeah, that's how I really kind of pretty much see it. Except for the moon and fall in Scorpio, I think it's kind of just more intense when the moon is in Scorpio. Okay, so now let's move along. Now you may be thinking though, if what if I have a fall or detriment? Is that bad luck or something? It doesn't really mean that. It just means that there's an area that you have to work a little harder at. That's a place in your life where you have to overcome struggles. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You know what I'm saying? Because adversity builds character. It's just a means of understanding that's where you may have to have to build character. Like a Mars and Cancer person may have to, finally, like, they may be getting bullied and they may have to finally stand up for themselves, and that may be a pivotal point in the building of their character. So it's not that it's completely bad. It's just just a means, because it's a way of understanding why some things can happen the way that it does. You know what I mean? So it's just a way to help you to feel like you kind of get it, why it happened like that. It can give you a sense of peace, maybe peace, you know kind of. I don't know. It's kind of depends on how you process it. But now, as an exhaustion can be, just remember, look at it like where you can truly shine. So your natural gifts, your natural abilities is where you have a reserve to draw from. It's like abundant, like you something that comes, the energy comes easy. The energy comes easy where you're dealing with exhaustion. And when it's a ruling or domicile, it's at home. Whatever area of life that planet rules. Since the planet is in the native land, so to speak, or natural environment, you get a double strength dose of its power. So you can always tap in more when you have it in a ruling planet. Like it's more available there to you, and you can kind of double down on it, so to speak. All right. Now let's get to some good stuff. Now looking at the. All right. So let's talk about the planets in the signs and in the houses a little bit, and also in tarot. When we look at the sun is the key to full self-expression. So if you have your chart, I hope you have it, and you're looking at it. But the sun in the birth chart, all right, when we're looking at the sun in the birth chart, now follow me kind of over here. Kind of over here. We're going to talk about the tarot in a second. Now, the sun in the birth chart signifies power, talent. It shows your individual creative style of self-expression and leadership. Okay, it defines the key for manifesting personal power and talent in ways that inspire other people. It unites your leadership ability with theirs. The sun can, or where your sun is, can reveal how you may unconsciously express personal power in a way that sparks resentment from others. It can convey self-expression by divine right, showing an area of life where your talents can be spontaneously expressed. It denotes how you can increase your vitality through the instinctive expression of your nature. It indicates what area you need to express yourself spontaneously in order to attain and maintain liveliness. It also discloses the area of radiance, creativity, and your greatest childlike joy, where your talents for contributing to the well-being of others reflects your natural ability for expression. You see, looking at the sun, wherever it is in your chart, These is all the things that the sun can tell you based on where it is and what the sign is in your chart. Now, before I proceed in talking a little bit about them being in the signs, when we're looking at tarot, of course, it's connected to the sun card, right? And so it's connected to the sun card. So it's like the source of light, the source of life, radiant energy. We measure our days by the sun. It's a metaphor of life and death, how the sun rises and sets. So the sun is an important focal point in the chart. It represents the ego and the self. So it symbolizes confidence and self-esteem, willpower, purpose, drive. It suggests virility, vitality, energy, strength. The sun is so visible, its placement in the astrological chart can highlight areas of public recognition, acclaim. It can also represent a strong male figure. See, this is why you have to know what energy is so you can know how to understand it in the chart, so you can know how it is in your life, so you can know what your life is trying to show you, so you can realize the lessons that you keep missing. So the sun being a masculine figure, it could be a father, it could be a boss, it could be a teacher, but it's masculine, it's direct, it nurtures, provides confidence. Now it rules over Leo, which is the sign of creativity, recreation, procreation, kids. It rules over the heart and spine. The element of fire connected to this tarot card, as well as the sun itself, of course. Right? So the sun, it's like we have unconscious states. We looked at the signs previously, and we talk about the shadow side of it. It's also could be named the unconscious side. So when we are in the unconscious expression, that's when we are encountering resistance. That's when we are lacking movement. That's when we're not feeling productive. But when we're in that conscious expressive state, that's when we feel powerful. That's when we feel confident, productive. Now we can't always be in that conscious expression mode all the time. So we can't always be on the up. So it describes a means of, it boils down to your choices. So, like I say, the sun has pretty much been the focal point of most astrology in today's time. And it's because most of the religions is sun worship, more of your more popular ones, at least in Western society, in America, in the United States rather. You know. But this is, the sun. This is how you can use your vital energy to demand center stage, to demand attention, or how you can use your gifts to give others center stage, or how you can empower others. But they still gonna be empowered off your own power. But it boils down to the sign. So we're looking at a sun in Aries. Aries, independent, action. Impulsive, to act without a whim, doing as they please, seen as selfish. Right? Now, if you're dealing with unconscious side of the Aries in the sun sign, then that would be a means of getting recognition for your independence from others. unknowingly acting in ways that could result in disrupting relationships, you know. But it just stems from wanting to be recognized as your own person. See, so you resist cooperation in terms of team effort. And when you behave that way, so impulsive, so rash, and lack consideration, you experience other people blocking your path. So, but when it's consciously expressed, when you do the shadow work, you share your talents in a courageous nature. You realize that in itself is courageous. You notice how your independent action can be an inspiration to others. Being aware of your natural leadership encourages them to express their independence. But they have to be aware of that natural leadership though. So becoming self aware of that, knowing that they naturally do things first, you know. So they have to be willing to share their talents and be courageous enough to be first. So it's about recognizing the gift for contributing, assertion. It empowers others. Remember we talking about the fire. And we talking about the sun. How does the sun act, right? So the sun gives life. So sun is how you can empower other people through your own self-expression. And so for Aries, that's for them taking on leadership. Being courageous enough to be first. Right? So this is just one example. So let's say we look at Sun and Cancer. You know what I'm saying? Cancers want to be emotionally centered. They're motherly. Like very naturally, just motherly. And they demand respect for their sensitivity. So a Cancer unconsciously expressed will want all the attention to be on themselves. See, they expect other people to react so that they might, you know, don't hurt their feelings. But to everybody, you appear hypersensitive, moody. It's like you want to be recognized for the sensitivity, but alright, now let's look at let's move to the next one. Alright, so these are a bunch of keywords for the sun. So when you're looking at the sun, these are just a means of ways to interpret that energy in your birth chart. So this is where you're brilliant. This is where you're charitable. This is where you're fortunate, where you're shiny. It's just where you shine. Think about the sun. Now this is you. In terms of it's where you're a king at, or a ruler at, or queen at. It's where you're happy at. It's where you're joyful at. So this is what the sun represents. Now the sun in the houses tell you how to spark your vitality. For example, the sun in your first house, then you want to be acknowledged as a leader. So your vitality is increased when you follow your own instincts and display your self-sufficiency. So when you act as a leader, it gives you more vitality, it gives you more energy. So you bring about your position as a leader when you assert your independence. If your sun is in the third house, right? If your sun is in the third house, then you want to communicate at your will and the talent to create circumstance for sharing information. So if your sun is in the seventh house, you want to be acknowledged as an equal. You want to you want to be partners. So just depending on where it is, if it's in the 10th house, then you get vitality when you out in the world, when you're involved in a profession, when you're taking charge, when you're doing something out involving in being in the top position. Like reaching a goal gives you more vitality. It revitalizes you. It's all about public recognition and how you create it. So that's gonna be centered more in the sign itself. Now this is just saying when it with it in the houses. See, all of this is just a means of putting all these things together. It's just so many things you can put together. So when we look at the sun, its rules or dignity or domicile in Leo, detriment in Aquarius, exalted in Aries, and fall in Libra. Which we can pretty much understand because the sun wants to rules over Leo, wants to, uh, it's the king, it's the center of the universe, so of course it'll be in fall in Libra. Libra is the sign of partnerships, signs of balance. Being exalted in Aries because Aries are the leaders. They are the first ones. They come first. So when your sun is in Aries, it's got that double pump because it's already naturally, the sun rules over Leo. So naturally that Leo energy of the sun ruling over Aries. So all of these things just make up the little, the different means of interpreting the chart. That's why I say, or this is why I honestly feel like we have to study our own charts. It's the best way to understand ourselves. Now we can consult with others when it comes to, progressive charts and composite charts and things like that. But when it comes to understanding the self, like, we should know how to read our own natal charts. And just in learning it, though, you'll know naturally how to read other people's charts. But it's still so many things that you can dive into and learn because, again, astrology is just so broad. All right, now, y'all, pardon me, my sinuses and everything been just kind of off, so my voice is kind of there. But let's move along. We're gonna push through it. All right, so we got the moon. Now, the moon is the key to emotional satisfaction. So, when we're looking at the moon in the birth chart, the moon shows what you need for emotional satisfaction. The moon shows the process how you may separate yourself emotionally from other people, how you can deprive yourself of closeness and intimacy that you need for personal security, because the moon has a shadow side, has a dark side. The moon can show where lessons of emotional dependence and personal insecurities arise, can show habits of survival, dependency from childhood that result in insecurity. Um, it can reveal the area where you need to nourish others or where you need to be nourished in a way that produces intimacy, acceptance, and nonverbal caring. It can also show you where your ability to adjust emotionally to changing situations in life. It can show you where the need for emotional nurturing and deep personal caring can be met in a way that satisfies your yearning for emotional completion, because the moon has a lot to do with your emotional self because it's about your emotional satisfaction. Now, the moon can tell you so much too. It can tell you about your past lives, because it can point through those habits that we fall to instinctually, and that just comes from a past life. So usually it's things that no longer serve us that we have to kind of get away from in terms or so to sense when we're talking about the moon. Now the moon is connected to the high priestess card when we're looking into the tarot. Now the high priestess is the ruler of the night, the keeper of secrets, the guardian of dreams. Okay, so the high priestess, the moon becomes a close and trusting confidant. When we're looking at the moon, or when we're looking at the high priestess, she knows the secrets of the universe, but she keeps them shared or tucked away and only shares them with a select few. Which is why you see the two pillars, Boaz and Yakin, signifying initiation into the dark side, or the occult, the hidden. I'm referring to these two here. The occult or the hidden aspects of things, the initiated side going into the abyss. Now the high priestess, the moon reflects the sun's light. So it also reflects our unconscious needs and desires. So because the moon is shrouded in shadows and darkness, it represents secrets and mysteries that may not be understood or even recognized. Okay, so it can symbolize memory, feeling. The moon reflects our fears and insecurities as well as our desires for nurturing and safety. It describes our sensitivities, our inborn responses to emotional triggers, our instinctive responses to threats, and our immediate reactions to predatory behavior. So, astrologically, the moon symbolizes the depths of the personality because it has ties to memory, to mood. It can make you moody, motherhood. So, all of those things, it also correlates to fertility. It's 28 days in the moon cycle, it's 28 days in a woman's cycle. Okay, so rhythms, the need to nurture our creation. The moon rules over Cancer. The Cancer is the sign of home and family. This is where, when we look in the chart, it rules over the fourth house. It's all about information about your childhood, about your roots, motherhood, nurturing. The moon rules over breast, stomach, ovaries, and womb. So nurturing power. Everything connected to that or those type of things in that sense. So when we're looking at the moon, this is what we are able to get from the moon. Okay, now when we move ahead and we look at the keywords for the moon, we got so many here: emotions, domestic, possessions for love, consider home, where you want to take home with you, receptive, represents what goes on at home, pleasure, liquid, how much you drink, feminine, represents liquids, too changeable, uncertain, fortune or unfortunate, depending on the position. Okay, adaptable, agreeable, fruitful, emotional, inconsistent, moody, maternal, peaceful, passive, restless, weak, where you cry a lot, family, nocturnal, night, queen, women, the womb, water, sleep, queer, quiet about certain things, depending on the placement. So all of these are different ways of understanding how that energy can be expressed from the moon, depending on the sign it's in, depending on the house that it's in. So when we look at the moon in houses, it tells you how to gain emotional security. So when we're looking at the moon in the houses and we're looking at how to gain security, now with the moon, we may discern in the moon sign at birth something of the way in which the individual expresses themselves when not an individual, but when a creature of instinct. So the moon symbolizes the instinctual or non-rational nature. It also suggests by its placement on the chart that sphere of life wherein the individual seeks a symbolic sleep, an unconsciousness, an escape, or a refuge, or a dream. So in general, right, the sun is the conscious part. So everything that you're constantly aware of is the sun. Everything that you know about self, right? But the unconscious is the moon. So that's what the moon aspect is. Okay. Now, like I said, the moon in the houses. Now, the moon in the houses is how to gain emotional security. So, depending on where that moon is in the house, will tell you how you can gain emotional security. Okay, so if the moon is in the ninth house, you can gain emotional security by sharing philosophical thoughts with people and through traveling, or teaching, or by involving yourself in experiences that's adventurous, something that expands your horizon. So if your moon in the fifth house, you could get emotional security by using your dramatic expression of personal feelings in ways that inspire others, and by being able to dramatize yourself through their creative efforts. Children can evoke your nurturing energy too when it's in your fifth house. So some people, uh, when they moon in their fifth house, you may only see their nurturing come out when kids are around. So that's a moon in fifth house type of person too. All right, so let's move it to the next one. All right, we got the Mercury. All right, so Mercury is the key to rewarding communication. Alright, so Mercury, when Mercury's in the birth chart, it signifies It can signify your talent for verbal communication. It can indicate fear that may unconsciously keep you from being yourself and telling the truth. It could illuminate the motives that cause you to withhold yourself verbally, which inevitably causes misunderstandings. Okay, so because of the lack of communication, it can display the process by which you may create endless mental worry and negative expectation that can lead to isolating or withholding yourself from contact with others. It can show the way to communicate in a manner that inspires. It can reveal the type of mental connection with others that you can, develop understanding. It can define the nature of your mental talents. It can help with the subjects you think about. So this is Mercury. Mercury is the key to rewarding communication. Now, remember, Mercury is seen as also as the trickster. So we see Mercury as the trickster. Well, let's just say this first. We see the magician, right? So in the tarot, it is the magician card. So when we look at the magician card, oh, excuse me. So with the magician, the um, the um, the tarot, the magician is a channel for transformation, for change. Conducts cosmic energy through his body. He uses the power to manifest his own reality. That's what magic is, right? Molding the material universe, right? So in most ways we see him depicted this way, holding a hand up, one hand up, one hand down. It's like the as above, so below. So the magician shows us that the outer world of cause and effect and the inner world of personal experience correlate with each other, because again, we are the micro of the macro. So Mercury, being the closest planet to the sun, it has the shortest orbit. Alright, so the planet's speed and agility has to do with its quick thinking. The versatile ruler of short trips in Gemini, neighborhood errands, everyday commerce, workday commutes. That's all Gemini energy. Now we know Gemini to be quick, quirky, always moving, always getting around. It also rules over the Virgo. Now the Mercury is the multitasker, right? So the Mercury dealing with, let's look at this. The Mercury, okay, let's see. Alright. So Mercury in alchemy, it can be connected to Mercurius. Alright, now Mercurius is the great transformer. Now, we can recall that it's man's urge to understand what raises him above the other kingdoms of nature, what drives him to reflect upon his development, and consequently to cooperate voluntarily with the unconscious in its striving towards further integration. Now remember what we know about Gemini and Virgo both being ruled by Mercury. Now Gemini, the lovers, we're talking about the split minds, the dual self, the twin selves, the two halves. And we're talking about Virgo, the hermit, as in it's specializing in the alchemy. So it's the bringing of the two together, which is the specialty of Mercury. So certain depictions of Mercurius, okay, so Mercurius was symbolic in it's a character seen as the trickster. That's why the magician we can see as in Loki as well. So the magician being able to cause the tricks. That's why Mercury goes in retrograde so much, and we're constantly told about Mercury in retrograde, right? All right, so follow me here, right? Because I know this kind of a lot. So this is a medieval depiction of Mercurius. It's a beast-like form or whatever. And we see the moon, sun. It's different depictions here. Also, this is an alchemical reference when we're talking about Mercurius, when we're talking about Mercury. Alright? So this is because it's referring to alchemy. Alright, so what the alchemist does is separate out the two seeds of metals, the philosophical sulfur and the philosophical mercury. We're talking about philosophical or metaphysical. Then they repeatedly apply the solvent coagular process and rejoin them until they merge at the highest degree of purity, creating the philosopher's stone. So one becomes the supreme self in the constant integration of the highest degrees of purity, i.e., becoming the greater version of self. Now, Carl Jung in Alchemy, the lion, the royal beast, is a synonym for Mercurius, or to be more accurate, for a stage in his transformation. So he's the warm-blooded form of the devouring predatory monster who first appears as the dragon or the serpent, the great serpent. So usually the lion form succeeds the dragon's death and eventually dismemberment. So this is who you get when you talk about Aslan in Narnia, when you get the mystical lion with all of the wisdom, the alchemical lion reference, the great royal beast. Okay, so in works of art in literature, Mercurius is often a trickster, but in fantasy story, his usual role is to bring sulfur and mercury together. Alright, so a good example is Mercutio in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Now, Mercutio's name is not an accident because it's pretty much coinciding or symbolizing Mercurius or Mercury. So he brings Romeo with him to the Capulets' party and causes Romeo and Juliet to meet, i.e., bringing them together, and the rest we know to be the story. Now, we also know Mercury, or to be the dual self, to be the twins, to be both, and to be androgynous. So we're looking at the god form of Mercury, so androgynous. So that's why they throw us for the loop and they put this on Mercurius in the movie of Romeo and Juliet. So now the mercury or the solvent, a lot of what is also referring to when you're dealing with alchemy has to do with melanin. So that's when you get everybody in the movie but Mercutio. He the one lonely brother in the movie because of what he has to represent, what the mercury does in bringing it all together to produce the philosopher's stone. So it's all symbolic. It has to go back to the origin. All right. So that's the same thing with Quicksilver when we look at in the Avengers, or when we look at Marvel, and we the twins, the sisters. All right. So Quicksilver is a form of Mercury. Even the symbolists, his death brought together Wanda and Vision, though. So it's basically what it represents. These are deific masks. So they are representations. It's like when you in school and you in a play and everybody got a part. That's exactly what these planets are. It's just every planet is just playing a part. So it's ruling over a specific domain. So this is how you communicate with the gods. This is how you communicate. So however you can interpret and understand Mercury, that's how you have to see it in your life. So that's why I have to present it to you in so many different ways and show you, okay, so these are the keywords affiliated with Mercury. We got communication, sense of sight, perception, understanding, expression, active mind, eager to acquire knowledge, what they could research, do a lot of reading, skillful, memory, nervousness, tendency to worry, forgetfulness, controversy, messenger, youthful, analytical, alert, cheating, cunning, critical, debating, intellectual, mental, restless, thinking, talkative, versatile, imaginative, inconsistent, sensitive, illusion, information, inquiry, language, literature, questions, rumors, travel, words, opinionated, education, thought process, how fast you talk about getting things done, balance, mentality. Mercury in the houses reveals your special intellectual ability. So when we're looking at Mercury, this is what we gotta understand, even with down to Loki and being a magician, because Mercury is also, as the church we looking at Loki, it's also a representative of Thoth or Dahudi or Hermes, however, whichever pantheon, whichever means you want to look at to be able to understand the energies, Ishu or Isu, when we looking into the African powers or the Orisha, it's really all the same. You just get to choose and see some of the stories just may fit together better for you to reveal something that you weren't able to be aware of initially. So when you look, because it correlates, it tracks, you can see the similarities between the different things, right? So this is what we're looking at, So Mercury, when it rules over Gemini and Virgo, but it's a detriment in Sagittarius. Why? Sagittarius has to do with the higher mind. So Mercury is more about the lesser mind because it's about the brain, your intellectual process. So it's exalted in Virgo and it's in the fall in Pisces. Alright? So like I said, Mercury being the smallest and fastest planet in mythology, it was an androgynous figure possessing the keys to knowledge who carries messages to and from between the gods and between gods and men. So Mercury is connected with Hermes, Thoth, the Tahuti, Loki, a symbol of the way in which we not only perceive, because remember Loki could play with illusion and deceive you and create dreams and stuff like that, but order our perception so that they can be comprehended and communicated. His is primarily the symbol of urge to understand, to integrate unconscious motive with conscious recognition. So we're bringing the two together. The Gemini represents the thing, the conscious and the unconscious, and the twins. And the Virgo is the process, but it's all about bringing together because it's having to do with Mercury. So that's what we know about Mercury. That's the significance of Mercury. So when you're looking at some of these movies, they're talking about atomic or nuclear activity, and they refer to Mercury, the significance of Mercury, using Mercury, because of the nature of it. And that's just in a sense looking at it chemically and physically. We're more so still expounding on it metaphysically and philosophically. So, looking at it that way. Now, moving along to Venus. Now we get to Venus. Venus is the key to love. Venus is the key to self-worth. Someone also says has to do with, the values and beauty. And it does have to do with those things also. But we're going to look at the key. And it's the key to love and self-worth. So Venus in the birth chart points out the way for social harmony enter into your personal life. It indicates the process by which you may lose confidence and self-esteem in social situations. It can reveal the area in which withholding yourself socially results in feelings of personal inadequacy, while sharing your personal gifts results in satisfaction and self-worth. It can reveal where you may relinquish inner pleasure in order to live up to the values of others. It can show your natural talent for experiencing and expressing pleasure that can be shared with others in a spirit of harmonious interaction. It can reveal your natural gift for putting other people at ease in social situations. It can define the specific key to building personal self-worth and establishing a firm sense of your value to others into social situations. It can show the expresses the receiving rather than initiating sexual principle and reveals those personal values that give you pleasure. So when it comes to Venus, right? When it comes to Venus, we know that Venus rules over Taurus and Libra, right? We know it rules over Taurus and Libra. So, as we say, it can show us what we love. It rules over the throat area. Now, when we talk about tarot, it's connected to the Empress card. The Empress card is an earth element card. So this is why Venus can be seen as attractive and something connected to money, and of course Taurus that says money hungry or materialistic. So the Empress card, Venus, when we look at the Empress, it's about beauty, love and attraction. Can be considered whatever would be considered the goddess of love. This would be Isis. This would be Aphrodite. Of course, the Empress is a consort, has a partner. So the Empress and the Emperor are partners. So symbolizing partnership, symbolizing union. Does rule over Libra. So in the chart, Venus, is all about generosity. Venus rules pleasure, enjoyment, sensual, romantic, graciousness, kind, being sympathetic. So the second house of treasures, possessions, that's what Taurus rules over in the second house and rules over the seventh house of marriage and partnerships and personal relationships. So when we're looking at Venus ruling the throat, you know, beauty, Venus, art, music, sweet talk, love songs, the planet of pleasure and consumption. So all of these things correlate with that Emperor card. So when we pull that card, if you're into tarot, it's in close proximity of Venus. It's a representation of Venus. So what is Venus meaning to you? What is going on in this person's love life? What is going on with their partnerships? What is going on with their values? And this also includes the spiritual values, and as well as the material ones, because we can get so caught up in the material ones with Taurus that we don't always think about the spiritual values, things of that nature. So that's very important when it comes to dealing with the values as well. Now we move on and we look at the key words pertaining to Venus. Alright. So adaptation, happiness, harmony, affections, art, seduction, self-worth, sensuality, throat, vanity, finances, eroticism, connection, desire, nature, charm, attraction, attractiveness, compromise, sociability, sexuality, relationships, money, beauty, loving, peaceable, tactful, indecisive, self-indulgent, emotionally demanding in love, with love, weak, dissatisfied, sharing, generosity of spirit, graceful. And when we see Venus in houses, it shows us how to increase our self-worth. It rules over Taurus and Libra, detriment in Aries, exalted in Pisces, and then a fall in Virgo. Alright, and so when we're looking at the Venus, um, let's say that there's a Venus in, let's say Venus in Scorpio. Now, there's an unconscious expression, there's a conscious expression. So the unconscious expression would have a self-defeating habit, and that would be trying to controlling your power in social situations. That would be like the tendency, they would have the tendency to withhold sharing their abilities to perceive the hidden talent and resources of others. So they may use others as a means of fulfilling their desires. So it would be like from constantly trying to maintain secret control of people around you. Because remember, not Virgo, Scorpio can get about control. Definitely when we're talking about the unconscious expression of Scorpio energy. Okay, so it can be but in actuality, when we're dealing with the unconscious, actually the fear is stemming from the individual being afraid that others are going to withdraw from their resources, that they are going to take from them, that they are going to use them, you know, and that can form rigid personal values. They can get lost opportunities, so a lot of things cannot happen because they don't want to share parts of themselves out of a fear of somebody else wanting to control them and use them and tap into their resources, when in reality they're doing that in opposite, because we're talking about the unconscious. So when we talk about the conscious, when you become consciously aware of that energy, then you have the awareness to perceive and encourage the undiscovered abilities of others, so they can inspire them to use their potential. So when they bring out other people's talents in a way that could both benefit them, it can be a transformative of your values and material opportunities, because remember, Scorpio knows how to work with shared resources, right? So you have the opportunity to experience transformation, because we're talking about Scorpio, of your feelings of self-worth by stepping out of your fear, stepping out of your comfort zone. And that's by taking the initiative to help others to awaken what's hidden in them, versus trying to figure out what's hidden in them for the sake of trying to control them or trying to manipulate them. So you figuring out, because Scorpio has the ability to get into what's hidden. So if Venus has to do with tapping into material wealth, because we're talking about Taurus, right? Being able to build off of, and the magneticism of Venus, period. So being able to attract and receive, right? So when a person has a gift in their Venus and what they attract people to them for, what people want to give to them for. So on the downside, they will be trying to use that energy for their own benefit instead of just sharing their own self and utilizing it together and transforming it by working with the person instead of just trying to control them. So that's just an example of the Venus. That's an example of it. Okay, now let's look at Mars. Now, Mars is the key to personal assertiveness. If you having issues with asserting yourself, you gotta look into your Mars energy. Alright, so Mars in the birth chart, when you're looking at Mars in the birth chart, Mars depicts your unique skill in taking the initiative. Alright? Alright, Mars reveals the process by which you may unintentionally separate yourself and alienate others. Mars shows how to assert yourself in a way that can be accepted by others and encourages a creative, satisfying interaction with them. It can also show you where you can make an individual commitment that will inspire and give you boldness and produce in productive self-assertion. It can indicate the initiating rather than receiving sexual principle and reveals the desire that motivates you to act. It denotes the area in which self assertion leads to joyous independence and renewed physical energy. Now, what we have to remember is there is positive and negative expressions of the planets depending on the sign that it's in, depending on an aspect to the planet. So, take for example Mars in a detriment of Cancer will find it harder to be able to take initiative. So depending on what you're dealing with in your chart is going to tell you where you have to work harder at. Where you have to develop yourself at. This is personal development. So you can develop yourself and build on yourself based on the keys in your birth chart. That's what it's for. Okay, that's all it's really for. See, Mars is associated with confidence, it's associated with your power. It symbolizes sensuality, stamina, strength. It governs ambition, aggression, assertiveness, and impulse. So it rules over Aries and Scorpio. My apologies for that not being there, but and Scorpio. It presides over blood and male sex organs. I don't really completely agree with that, but we'll just let that kind of rock. So it's associated with fever, accidents, trauma, pain and surgery. So when we have Mars in a sixth house having to do with health, we can want to be cautious of that, what that may pertain to. Or even when Mars is transiting and it's in the first house, and the first house representing the physical body, what type of energy that may bring itself. Because it's all about whatever sign the planet is currently in, that's what it's going to be expressing. So that's going to tell you what it's dealing with or how it's ruling over that domain. So it's all goes together. It really, really does all go together. Now, when we look at Mars, Mars is connected to the tower. All right, now it's the tower. When we look at the tower card, it has all the elements around it. Everything's going on with the tower card. Everything is crumbling down. It's a burst of lightning, wind and clouds, everything. The ground is shaking, it's tumbling down, everything is happening. So when you do a tarot reading and you see a tower, you know that it's about to get real. It's going down. This person, like, they're having a tower moment. They're having a real moment. So whatever that may entail. All right. Now, it's some type of breakdown is about to happen. Some type of disintegration. Something being pulled apart. Some type of collapse of structure. Something that was supposed to be stable. Whether that's a relationship, whether that's a career, whether that's a home, it can symbolize the destruction of false ideas, beliefs. It can represent a purge or an intervention. But a tower also represents enlightenment, inspiration, and release, because it's a time where you're going to have to start again. Now, the tower experience is purification, it's self-preservation. So the old structure is being torn down so that you can start some renovations. Look at it like, well, now we can get them renovations we need to get. Now we can make them changes we need to make. Because Mars is associated with confidence and power. Alright, so even when it comes to sports, competitions, business, entrepreneurship, all of it is Mars, war games, those type of things, military, police, Mars rules over that Aries energy. Okay, so when we're looking at the Mars, more of the Mars, okay? Alright, so this is everything pertaining to Mars. So if we were to see Mars in, let's say Mars in Leo, let's say Mars in Leo, unconsciously, they can alienate people by a certain ways that make them feel like everything all about them. So sometimes when you say negative expression, right, there can be certain transits that's happening that can impact your natal Mars, that you can be in certain instances a situation where your energy is just received that way. It may not necessarily mean that's who you are, but it can be reflecting an unconscious part of yourself that may be that way in certain instances, but during transits it's just being brought to light. So when that happens though, it can be a competition for center stage, when people start competing too much, trying to ensure that they are acknowledged. And what ends up happening is they sacrifice their leadership. They lose energy by indulging in dramatic demonstrations of authorities. And, you know, when instead, if it was a more of a conscious expression, use the power of dramatic emotional expression to inspire and encourage others in their self-expression. See, people can feel like get putting light on other people can take the light away from them, but it's not always the case when you're dealing with a Leo energy or when you're dealing with a Sun energy. Because remember, Leo's connected to the Sun, right? So you still gotta implement that when we're saying Mars in Leo. You know, So, that could also mean, being stimulated in creative endeavors, being motivated to create kids, make kids, uh, being childlike. So it can be different things in terms of in how you look at that energy and how it's expressed. And when we move forward, and we look at the keywords. Okay, so we look at Mars, and it's funny because we see the concept. We've heard for so long, women are from Venus, men are from Mars, and it's basically a depiction or a way, a means of expressing Venus and Mars as archetypes. Because Mars is seen as the male archetype and Venus is the feminine archetype. It's like the mom and the dad. It's like the emperor and the empress, like I say. So because the empress energy, when you see that card, it can implement pregnancy. So we talking about consorts energy particularly for a reason. So Mars, the keywords: action, male archetype, masculinity, passion, assertiveness, aggression, competition, anger, energy, force, sex drive, sexuality, temper, heat, impatient, conquest, courage, lust, life force, violence, direct, legitimate use of willpower, rude, restless, thoughtless, rude, natural fighter, use of force of threats, vigorous, initiative, impulsiveness. Mars in the houses show you your ability for assertion and accomplishment. When we see Mars, it rules over Aries and Scorpio, in detriment in Libra, exalted in Capricorn, and in a fall in Cancer. So another means or another way of looking at it also, we've heard the term toxic masculinity. What it's referring to, what it's trying to imply, is an imbalance of too much of a masculine. So when you look at Mars and you can see certain negative expressions or creative or self-destructive expressions of Mars, like violence, aggression, sex drive, temper, heat, impatient, rude, restless, these type of things are just an expression of the energy itself and what it is, but no one is completely those things. See, we have a Mars energy too, ladies. Women have a Mars energy just like men have a Venus energy. But society specifically doesn't wire us to balance both natures. it imbalances us because this creates imbalances in our personality as well. So we see this, but it's a means of understanding the emperor. What would an emperor entail? It would entail a ruler. It would entail a conqueror. It would entail someone who would need power and strength and the ability to be violent, to protect one's kingdom, to protect one's empire, to protect the empress. So that is just a necessary means of energy in expression. See, Mars symbolizes the passion which seeks to expand itself. Mars desires, and Venus is the urge to be desired. Mars enables us to impose our way despite others and through self assertion and exposes the difference. So, Venus is the ability to receive. So, Mars as the conqueror, the expression of Mars may be seen in the way in which a person goes about getting what they want. So how far is a person willing to go to get what they want? So, and how they go about doing that is the Mars. So the quality or mode of his desires is reflected by this planet. And that's man or woman. And so sometimes we have certain aspects that pushes certain things through in our psyche. So for men, they're more closely able to align with that Mars psyche, that Mars energy. So let's look at this. So when we say Mars in the house, is how you have the ability for assertion and accomplishment. So Mars in the sixth house, they usually will say this is not something you want. But it's because if Mars is in the sixth house, that means you regain your strength and energize yourself by planning routines that add healthy organization to your life. So you have to be assertive. You have to take action when it comes to your health and when it comes to planning your body around your body. So your ability for assertion and accomplishment is connected to a sense of duty and self-perfection, a sense of self-development, personal self-development. And that's not just in, healthy physically. It is does include physically, but it can also include dealing with, your mental health as well, because we're talking about that sixth house is the house of personal development, the house of alchemy, of transmutation, so to speak. Well, outside of that eighth house, but it's a means of alchemy. It's a means of understanding that energy in that sixth house. So, you would have the ability to attain a sense of self perfection by taking the initiative and actively serving others with this as well, because the Virgo rules over the sixth house, which has to do with service. So, however, a person is going to take action, so they could go back to the sign that it's in. So these things are just a means of interpreting the chart, just interpreting the energy, just understanding the energy. If you can understand the energy in one way, you can understand it in other ways. It all coincides. It's really all interconnected. It really truly is. So when we move on to Jupiter, Jupiter is the key to social opportunity and reward. So Jupiter in the birth chart, Jupiter shows how to build trust and faith in yourself, and which ultimately leads to faith in others. It represents the key of understanding by which you can independently create value and personal growth out of any circumstances that life presents. Okay, it reveals where you naturally see the larger perspective, which leads to faith in life and confidence in yourself. It shows how trust can be cultivated, faith in yourself, and in your ability to handle any unfamiliar or unexpected circumstance that may occur by taking a more philosophical view of life. It pinpoints the perspective that can free you to act in a way that automatically leads to joy through social opportunity for personal expansion. It can denote an area of natural good fortune that, when activated, overcomes feelings of limitation and fear. It illuminates the area in which where your perspective teaches faith in an ordered universe behind chaotic appearances, and locates the source of trust that can be tapped and developed within each individual. So Jupiter, and it's connected to the Wheel of Fortune card. Jupiter is the great benefit when we look in a chart. When people look at Jupiter as where you're lucky, that's what they'll typically say. But why do they say that? Because Jupiter is all about opportunity. It rules, remember, it rules over Sagittarius. right? Remember that Sagittarius can intuitively seek out the perfect opportunities, right? And it has to do with the nature of Jupiter, the big planet, the ruler of the gods. Jupiter ruled over the gods because, well, I mean, he was the biggest. So he's the bringer of luck and the bringer of good fortune. So when we look at Jupiter, Jupiter is also Thor. When we look at Jupiter, um, it rules the hips and thighs. Jupiter connected to the wheel of fortune is the fire element. Because remember, we talking about the Sagittarius. We're talking about intuition. We're talking about fantasy because it's almost like, how did that happen? What are the chances of that happening? It's like a fantasy, right? So it's the wheel of fortune card. We talk about the wheel of fortune. It's the spinning wheel of destiny and fate. It moves through time and space, constantly cycling and recycling energy and matter. Symbolize luck and opportunity in the twists and turns of fate, prosperity, and success. So when we're looking at that Wheel of Fortune card, or when you pull that Wheel of Fortune card, we know that there's an opportunity that's at hand for the individual if they are able to see it. If they are able to see it, that's the key for when you pull that card. When you see that card, you know, Jupiter has great gifts of wisdom, success, long life, good health, family, friendship, travel, philosophy. Jupiter gives you good fortunes to experience the fullness of life. So it's like everything that's full, everything that's good, everything that's big, doing it big. That's Jupiter. How you gonna do it big, real big? That's that Jupiter's energy. So where do you have Jupiter? What planet is your Jupiter in? If you have Jupiter in Aries, now unconscious expression of that, a person would have to a hesitation to go their own way, because the Jupiter is, I mean, Aries is the leader, is the ruler. So the result in that, they will have fears of inadequacy, because, and it'll block the actions. So meaning a person could feel like they don't have what it takes to take the action, don't feel like they are able to lead, to jump out and be the leader. But if they don't have, if they lack the faith in their independence or their ability, then they will neglect their social opportunities for leadership, their social opportunities to be innovative, you know, to be first, to be a leader. So by pulling into the distrust, because Jupiter expands, whether it's good or bad. So if you fall into the lack of faith, if you fall into that, it's going to expand. But see, when you have a conscious expression of that energy, when you accept that leap of faith, when you wholeheartedly express confidence, vision, sense opportunity, you feel you feel self-expression. You build trust in others by relying on your instincts and taking the initiative to do things. Because when you trust yourself, you can appreciate the value of independence, thereby expanding your leadership and opportunities in many different things. So it's like luck coming into your favor when you jump out there and express yourself in what you are capable of doing. And it can lead to a position of leadership. When we look at Jupiter's keywords: luck, chance, belief, system, aspirations, abundance, education, philosophy, religion, ritual, seeker, self-improvement, study, future, fortune, expansiveness, excess, faith, cheerful, lawlessness, wisdom, truth, higher learning, higher mind, hope, travel, success, generosity, grace, wealth, optimistic, laziness, jovial, desire for improvement, extremist, overconfidence, laziness, hypocritical, overextending itself, and wasteful. And we look at Jupiter in the houses. Jupiter tells you how to attract social opportunities and rewards. And Jupiter rules over Sagittarius, partly Pisces, detriment in Gemini, exalted in Cancer, and fall in a Capricorn. So when Jupiter is, let's say Jupiter is in the ninth house, if it's in the ninth house, then you inherently trust in taking risks and having adventure in life. So you feel that there are spiritual powers protecting you, and you believe in your own good luck. You attract social opportunities and rewards when you involve yourself in publishing, philosophy, higher consciousness, education, and foreign travel, all things Jupiter. Jupiter, that's the house of rulership for Jupiter because it rules over Sagittarius, which does rules over the ninth house. So if we were to look at, let's say, the 11th house. So ordinarily you should trust in your abilities in creating friendships that help you to expand through life successfully. You attract social opportunities and rewards when you align yourself in group activities with scientific or humanitarian aims or goals. So when you do things in that 11th house, when you trust your abilities in that house, what it has to deal with, then you good to go. That's how it typically works. Now, when Jupiter and Saturn, we leave behind the sphere of personal drives and impulses, and it takes the individual outside of the sphere of their personal ego consciousness, and they begin to establish contact with what is transpersonal, so both inside and outside. So Jupiter is the religious urge in man. It's the urge that Sigmund Freud, felt was merely a sublimation of the sexual instinct. But Jung says that it's the basic drive within the human being as any of the biological impulses. Man needs not only to survive and to propagate his species, but he needs to know that somehow, somewhere, there's a pattern, there's a meaning, there's a order, there's something behind why he's here. He must have something. So this planet symbolizes the myth-making principle in the most positive sense of the word myth. So this is why we have religion up under Jupiter, because Jupiter is thus connected with the urge within the psyche to create symbols. And this takes us into the profound depths when we consider the creative power that has shaped the great myths, legends, and religions of the world. It is the same creative power that shapes the symbolism of our dreams. Symbols are the primordial language of life, and Jupiter symbolizes the function which both creates them, man, and intuits their meaning. Okay? So this is where things become of great myth when we're dealing with Jupiter. Alright, so now we're going to take a look at Saturn. We're going to look at Saturn, and Saturn is the key to public achievement. Now, Saturn in the birth chart shows the process of fulfilling your social obligations in a public way. It indicates the process by which fears deflect you from fulfilling your ambition. It pinpoints the area of your greatest desire and greatest fear. It illuminates self-discipline and physical responsibility, your endurance, and where you have the ability to see things through. The purpose, direction, and social responsibility in your life is where the power of personal commitment to contribute to society gives you the courage to rise above inhibition and fear. And it also pinpoints where you do not yet have it straight, that area where you must apply repeated effort to gain mastery on a non-ego level. Only through accepting and meeting the test of Saturn can the bliss and freedom of states of consciousness represented by Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto be secured on a permanent basis. Now we're looking at Saturn. Saturn in terms of the tarot is the world card. It's the symbol of the symbolizing that we are made of energy, and energy never created or destroyed, just simply transformed. Saturn represents it is the card of it does have a meaning or an alignment with time leading to, of course, death and things of that nature. Now Saturn is the rule maker, so it makes sure that we all share, these values, certain particular things. Saturn has to do with when we look at it in mythology, Saturn was the god of agriculture, conformity, the founder of civilization. So Saturn rules over Capricorn. That's the sign of work and responsibility. So, and also ruling over the 10th house, where you can find information about your career and your public image. So, and when we look at Saturn, it rules over the bones and the skin. The world card corresponds to an earth element, and Saturn itself also corresponds to earth element, we know that it can be connected to that root chakra, right? To that grounding chakra. Now, one thing about Saturn is the Saturn return. Now, the Saturn return is one of the more well-known astrological events or milestones of the chart. It's basically every 29 to 30 years or so. That's how long it takes Saturn to make one orbit around the sun. So when Saturn returns to the degree it occupied at the time of your birth, that's when we cross over a major threshold and we go into the next chapter of our life. So that Saturn return is three distinct stages of experience. For women, it's going from maiden to mother to crone. For men, it's going from scout to soldier to chief. So, you're going from young to middle age, adult, and then you into your older age. So the first Saturn return is usually the hardest because it's the first test of your character, the first test of your strength and your endurance. So Saturn insists on strong structures and foundations. So around 30 years old, we usually go through things that build or solidifies our foundation going on into our adulthood. And if there's weakness that's found when Saturn does return, then those things pretty much have to be upheavaled and rebuilt. Whether that's, losing relationships, realizing your job is unfulfilling, or some type of living situation, whatever the case may be, Saturn return is usually the testament to the character that brings all of that typically kind of out. So looking at Saturn can also give you insight into your karmic past, looking at past lives because it's energy that you now have to balance out. Now Saturn is where we see the shadow a lot of times, and I'm gonna elaborate on that a little bit later when we jump back into bringing the shadow back into cohesion with this astrology. But Saturn pretty much does that. So when we look at, let's say, a Saturn in Libra. So a Saturn in Libra, unconscious expression of that would be trying to maintain harmony of emotional security by clinging to certain social ideas and being non-confrontational, always trying to be pleasant. Now, the result of that is difficulty with being yourself because it cuts off the personal expression with others. So, when you place a limit on your actions with expectations of how others should respond, then that's severe limitations. So, all of your relationships will become burdensome and disappointing because of those limitations that you have placed on yourself and on the relationship and on the people in those relationships. So, to consciously express that, working through that energy, then your skills and social responsibility leads to being able to create relationships that actually work by bringing into manifestation their natural inherent harmony. That's acknowledging yourself as creator of the harmony, and this harmony that you experience gives you security in your ability to experience what is created. Now, once you are willing to undergo the possibility of disharmony in relationships, you have the capacity to actualize yourself by sharing your honest individual point of view. So that's a natural, authentic balance that can manifest in response. So the idea is to commit yourself to integrity, sharing your independent point of view honestly, and then objectively noticing how others respond. So this process allows you to use your diplomatic abilities on an impersonal level that serve a collective need. The result can bring about the necessary structure to produce an alliance that answers both your needs and the needs of others, with no limiting justification of how you think the relationship should appear. So this once being able to work through those limitations that's rooted in your own fears and through emotional, dealing with those insecurities, then it pretty much leads to being able to establish more healthy relationships because you're not fooling yourself with limiting the relationship thinking that there won't be any disharmony. There's going to be disharmony sometimes. It's like knowing that sometimes people are going to agree. It doesn't mean that it's the end of the relationship, because actually when you both authentically and are able to honestly share what you feel and what you think, it can actually work out to be even better for both parties and maybe even other people. So that's really all you're saying when you're really referencing in reference to looking at your Saturn. Now that's way more easier said than done, because when we're dealing with Saturn, this is one of the more difficult placements, one of the more difficult things we have to deal with. So if you have a lot of aspects, like negative aspects to that Saturn, then that is gonna have its effect on it as well, and going to provide its own difficulties and how you're able to, move forward and push through and endure when pertaining to those lessons. So Saturn, when we're looking at Saturn and some of the keywords, we're looking at limitations, we're looking at reliability, mastery, ambition, authority figures, boundaries, career, old age, negativity, practicality, contraction, resilience, responsibility, self-restriction, destiny, discipline, negative conscience, cynicism, control, shadow, seriousness, fear, effort, status quo, excellence, duty, defensiveness, denial, destiny, conservation, coldness, caution, skeleton, self-restriction, reality, check, excellence, job, fear, strength, testing, time, wisdom, vocation, fearful, cautious, serious, uninspired, discipline, patient, negativity, crippling, inhibition, limited, mean, prudent, practical, acceptance of responsibility. So you think about Saturn in this way. Saturn is the type of energy that limits you. So when we have problems with limitations, there can be things that we want to do, but we can't. We have to learn how to work around the limitations. See, Saturn in any birth chart indicates a type of energy that is naturally restricted, at least in the youth. Okay, so the element of Saturn in the chart indicates a specific problem with fully accepting without fear that level of experience represented by the particular element. See, this fear is often an outgrowth of an old pattern of life that has now become intolerably rigid and oppressive. Although at one time, such as maybe in past lives, this caution and self discipline could have served as a useful purpose, but not anymore. Okay, so when we look at, let's take for example, okay, if we look at Saturn in water, because Saturn is in a detriment when it's in Cancer, which is a water sign. So Saturn in water often indicates a fear of emotional expression. Those with Saturn in a water sign are overly sensitive emotionally, for they are too rigidly involved with defending their sensitive feelings from the threats of the outer world. They tend to be extremely cautious about accepting their feelings openly, for that would make them vulnerable. So Saturn in water signs can indicate a severe degree of emotional repression, but that still does not mean that the person isn't feeling anything. So people with this position of Saturn in their charts need to make a concentrated effort to express their feelings with discipline, focus, and self-acceptance. So when the individual has learned to unwind and to let go and to accept themselves, they are then able to direct consciously all that energy that was blocked up by the fears and the negative attitudes. Now when we look at Saturn in the air signs, it indicates the need to stabilize one's understanding, and these people will often express their sensitivity to other people as well as their knowledge in their daily work. And we see here that Saturn is exalted in the sign of Libra, so Libra being an air sign. Now, Saturn in the fire signs shows the needs to stabilize one's identity, and people with displacement of Saturn often find that their real work is to create new forms for their self expression, whether in their arts or in business. Alright, so now those with Saturn in earth signs need to stabilize their efficiency, and it is important to them to express reliability and precision in their daily work. So we know Saturn is rules over Capricorn and Aquarius, and it's in the fall when it's in Aries, detriment Cancer, exalted in Libra. So when we see Saturn in the houses, we see the need to acknowledge a desire. So that's what that is pointing towards when we're looking at Saturn in the houses. So if Saturn was in the fifth house, then a person would gain healthy control of their life when they are willing to take charge of their heart in a way that creates a happy experience for everybody. That's including themselves. So they have to acknowledge their desire to feel secure by playing a leading role in life. So Saturn offers the responsibility and the reward of expressing creative talents in constructive ways that brings closeness to loved ones rather than isolation. But it would take a means for being worked through, of course, because of course that's the Saturn, because we feel so limited. And usually by the time that Saturn returns back around, It's like it said that Saturn returns with the rewards, and you're able to move forward with the gifts of the old, but you're not no longer, clinging to those old patterns. You progressed into who you are meant to be currently in this lifetime. All right, so when we look at Uranus, okay, Uranus is the key to aliveness. All right, the key to aliveness. Now, Uranus, when we're looking at Uranus, all right, so Uranus in the birth chart, it illuminates the circumstances in which an intuitive perception of life can be received, empowering you to rise above the confusion of interfering ideas. All right, so that's one thing about Uranus there. Now, also, when we're looking at Uranus, Uranus can also indicate the process by which your unpredictable behavior could lead others to feel that you are too untrustworthy, disruptive, or eccentric. It could also show the areas of life where you must experience a sense of personal independence and assume responsibility to safeguard and express your need for freedom in a way that does not alienate others. It could also pinpoint the areas in which you need to experience, in a responsible, conscious way, the excitement of independence and personal freedom in order to maintain clear perceptions. It can reveal the manner in which your unconscious expression of careless, eccentric, indifference to other people can lead to unexpected situations of emotional disruption, separation, alienation. Think about Aquarius being aloof. So it can denote where you have the potential to express innovative ideas that can alter antiquated situations that no longer meet people's needs. Now, Uranus pretty much defines a whole generation. Alright, so when we're looking at Uranus, sorry about that, when we're looking at Uranus, it spends approximately 7 years in each sign before it moves on, and it's one of the three outer planets, along with Neptune and Pluto, that pretty much give you the nature of a generation in addition to defining some personal qualities. Alright, so on a strictly personal level, the influence of Uranus is felt and worked within the house of location of the chart. The term planetary mind is pretty much when you're talking about Uranus, it refers to the mind of God. It is the omniscient, the place where creative ideas originate, where problems are solved, and from which all inventions come. When you tap into Uranus, you tap into a higher frequency of mental energy. This is why I say that the Aquarius is the ruler of another universe, of another world, because Uranus in itself is just, of course, all of the outer planets are higher frequency, but when you get to talking about Uranus, we're talking about innovative technological advances. So whenever you see, think about alien life with advanced technology, think about Atlantean life with advanced technology. That's what comes to mind when you think about Uranus, and how the whole, because it's such dealing with idealism, it's so much dealing with innovation, futuristic. So when we look at Uranus in the tarot, Uranus is the Fool card. And when we are looking at the Fool card, it depicts a young person that looks like they're about to take a leap of faith. So it's like a free spirit plunging ahead without any regard for the past, the present, or the future. So it symbolizes hope and change. Okay, so it represents blind trust in the universe, conviction that there is a path to the future that they are taking. So some even might say that the fool is a soul in search of experience, willing to trade innocence for wisdom. But that's not an easy exchange, because with that comes the living, and living is never easy, as we are always told, right? All right, so if you look at the glyph of Uranus, it looks like a satellite. So the planet is often associated with technological advancements and innovations. So that's why you can kind of think of it like that, or kind of take a shortcut in remembering, because it looks like a satellite, so it has like a futuristic type of glyph. See, the glyphs are important because we're talking about symbolism. That's why I'm making sure to put each glyph with each sign, with each planet, because it's important for your subconscious, because your subconscious speaks in terms of symbols, of symbolic reference. So you may not know what's being activated within your subconscious, in seeing and referencing to these symbols and these glyphs, and what these things can mean to you on a personal, level, in terms of your own DNA. So when we, so in terms of that, so that's Uranus. Okay. All right. And so we move on to look at the keywords. So, keywords affiliated with Uranus: innovation, breakdown, change, chaos, breakthrough, outsider, detachment, creativity, rebelliousness, excitement, electricity, social awareness, desire for change, technology, freedom, excitement, humanity, genius, freedom, future, expectations, unorthodox, universal mind, unpredictable, willfulness, revolutionary, science, unexpected, upheaval, restlessness, originality, nonconformity, liberation, deviance, extremism, fellowship, impatience, independence, inventive, unconventional, abnormal, antisocial, revolutionary, dangerous, eccentric, extremism, respect for freedom, outspoken, reformative, strong willed, invented, and detached. Now, Uranus rules over Aquarius, it's in a detriment in Leo, exalted in Scorpio, and is in a fall in Taurus. Where we see Uranus in the houses is where an individual wants to go against the established order, or that's where one wants to rebel. That's where you want to better humanity, because we know that most things, most change does not come. It comes with, you know, resistance. It comes with rebellion. It comes, through extreme forces, and that's the energy that it represents. Okay, so when we're looking at the Uranus, this is pretty much what we're looking at. So let's say, all right, we're gonna move on to Neptune. So Neptune is the key to emotional ecstasy. Ecstasy. This is probably why you always get drugs and alcohol affiliated so much with Neptune. Now, Neptune in the birth chart, with Neptune is in, when you're looking at Neptune in the birth chart, it can show you where it removes the illusion and reveals the truth, thereby showing how to actualize your ideas in a way that works and produces rewards in the material world. It can depict the self-defeating and confusing patterns where your expectations are the highest and disappointments are the most intense. It can define how your preconceived notions of how the ideal would manifest must be sacrificed in order for the reality of the ideal to appear. It can show those patterns perpetuating the self-deception and emotional illusions that prevent you from experiencing the ecstasy inherent to the true ideal. It indicates the arena in which you can begin the process of trusting the universe in order to fulfill an idealistic desire, or where you allow the universe to manifest according to its standards of perfection by releasing your preconceived notions, standards, and ideas. It can also signify the area of life offering the strength, serenity, and ecstasy of a divine contact and a vision and trust in the workings of the universe. Now, Neptune spends about 14 years in each sign. Okay, so this is one of your outer planets. So, in many ways, the sign containing Neptune is an earmark of a generation. Right, so as much as Neptune shows the idealistic desires of an entire group of people, as well as being an indicator of personal idealism. So the personal and generational effects are the same. It's the energies of the planet are purified on a personal level. Okay, on a strictly personal level, Neptune's influences are felt and work within the house. So of course it goes when we're looking at the outer planets, it's about the house. And also as well, like if you're like a rising Aquarius, then that would mean that the ruler of your chart would be considered Uranus, or if you're a Pisces, it would be Neptune. So in that sense, it can give more of a personal emphasis on that particular planet as well in your chart. That's something else to look for. The ruler of your horoscope, the ruler of your chart. So the ruler of your chart would be the ruler of your rising sign. We're going to get to that in just a second. I do have the rising sign in here with the planets, so we will talk about that. Now in the tarot, the Neptune is connected to the hangman. Now, when you look at the hangman is suspended in reality, in altered reality. Consciousness transcends the physical, fantasy, imagination, visionary art, period of willing self-sacrifice, and the suspension of everyday cares and concerns. So when we're talking about the hangman, Okay, it's associated with fantasy, imagination, like we said, visionary art. They're idealistic, sensitive, and exceptionally psychic. Now, it's not good at establishing boundaries. Now, that can be an issue because when it comes to indulgence, the real world can be dark and dangerous for the Neptunian. Okay, so a Neptunian spirited person quickly learns to escape, and their means of escape can be through spiritual practices like meditation, prayer, sleep. It can also be dreams, but sometimes they seek escaping through alcohol and drugs, which is also ruled up under the same energy. So sometimes those substances are a form of self-medication. It's a means of blocking out those psychic messages that floods the Neptunian soul. So you got to know that psychic messages aren't always what we think they are. It's not just knowing what somebody's thinking. There's so many different little subtleties that people can be picking up on that nobody else has any idea of, or we don't feel. And sometimes they just want to numb it and they want to turn it off because they're so exceptionally sensitive to this particular type of energy. So that's why Neptune, which rules Pisces, and that 12th house, that's where we look for secrets. That's where we look to things that are confined and locked away: hospitals, prisons, mental institutions. All right. Neptune's is associated with mysterious illnesses and neurosis. So this is what we keep in mind when we are looking at the Neptune. Now, the key words for Neptune would be deception, inspiration, intangible, anxiety, disillusionment, oneness, disintegration, dissolution, self sacrifice, guilt, elusive, ecstasy, romantic love, sacrifice, savior complex, madness, confusion, compassion, martyr complex, mysticism, merging, addiction, dreams, illusion, higher octave of Venus, transcendence, unknown, visionary, weak, boundaries, impressionable, imagination, ideals, glamour, fascination, fantasy, escapism, sensitivity, spiritual values, psychic sensitivity, impressionable, imaginative, inspirational, perverse, deceptive, sensitive, idealistic, unstable, subversive, spiritual attainment, self-destructive, escapism, compassionate, invasive, of responsibility, delusional, or visionary. Now, some of those, that covers the positive and the negative aspects of it. So, Neptune in the house is where we ignore or avoid reality, or where we are seeing something higher. So, to other people in this particular house or wherever it is where we're delusional. Now, being extremely spiritual about something can be a form of delusion because it's a mean of seeing a bigger picture, and sometimes it can just be so elusive of reality or so far removed from reality that that it feels like that it's a sense of delusion. So there's a very fine line. That's why you get a lot of correlations between mental illnesses and dealing with psychic energies or psychic abilities or spiritual or supernatural callings, because this is all within the same wheelhouse. This is all dealing with the same expression of energy. We're talking about this Neptunian energy. Now, if you think about it, they didn't acknowledge Neptune, and it was the ancients traditionally looked at the seven planets. So Neptune was not a part of the traditional system of looking at astrology. So this is something that is later, something that was attached to the system later as in a description of this energy. All right. So that wraps up the Neptune. Now, Pluto. Now, when we look at Pluto, Pluto is the key to fearlessness and empowerment. All right. Now, when we see Pluto in the chart, when we see Pluto in the birth chart, Pluto reveals where you most covertly resist change, where a willingness to change will have the biggest impact on your life and will result in fearlessness. It depicts the part of yourself that is the most difficult to face and to expose to others. It shows the way to release the area of greatest internal repression, and in the process, experience a new sense of personal empowerment and self mastery. It represents the area where you are constantly challenged to use your power to alter stagnant situations drastically. It illuminates that area of life in which you can obtain the rewards of true self mastery.